Hello, welcome to week 4 of Legal Tuesdays, our series looking at key legal issues arising in the film and television industries. I'm James Whitaker and I act as part-time legal advisor to the film and television charity. So in today's session we're going to be talking about yawn contracts, and before I lose you all, unfortunately this is a critical topic for anyone working in the industry to understand, not least to enable you to protect yourself sufficiently. So I'll try to keep this brief. So let's start with some basics. What is a contract? Well, a contract is a legally binding agreement between two or more parties to carry out certain specific obligations or mutually agreed promises. The performance of those obligations or promises is enforceable as a matter of law, which means that the courts will allow one party to enforce the other party's performance of its obligations. And if the other party does not perform those obligations, the courts will award certain remedies, usually damages. Now, as with any sector, if you're working in the film and television industries, it's important not to underestimate the significance of contracts and really how valuable they can be as a source of protection. So whatever the nature of your involvement in a project, ensuring that there is a sufficient identifiable contract in place, which by the way does not need to be in writing necessarily, although that will help, is fundamentally important. Now, there are multiple reasons why this is so important. For example, if you find yourself having to chase a non-paying party who has used your work, or when it comes to establishing chain of title when you come to sell your project, and that's a topic we'll come back to in a later session, or if you consider someone who's agreed to provide services to your project, if you are unable to point to an identifiable, enforceable contract setting out the terms of the agreement, then the challenge is going to be far greater. So what should a contract contain? Well, I've mentioned that oral contracts can be enforceable, but it's always preferable to have a written document. And in that written form, the more specific the information the document contains, the better. So as a best practice minimum, the contract should set out the names of the parties to the agreement, when and where the contract was made, terms and conditions that each party to the agreement must observe, including the product or the service that is the subject of the agreement. So for example, providing the screenplay for the film or television show, or providing FX services to the production. What is being exchanged for that service or product? So in other words, the payment terms. And an acknowledgement that both parties agree to the terms of the contract, and ideally a signature from all of those parties. Now, a couple of points to look out for when you are confronted with, when you're looking at a contract. And the first of these is the jurisdiction clause. This sets out which laws will govern the contract and therefore which laws will govern any dispute relating to the contract. Now, depending on who you are contracting with and where they are based, the laws of the contract are likely to be those of England and Wales, or particularly if you're dealing with a studio, possibly California or New York. And a key point to remember here is that there are significant differences between the laws of each of those jurisdictions, so taking close note of which jurisdiction applies is crucial. And the second point to note here is to look out for assignment provisions. Particularly if you are a content producer, be aware of terms which assign the copyright in your work product. Similarly, any restrictions on your rights to sell or license your rights in the work product should be noted, as should any carve-outs or limitations on the obligations of the counterparty. Finally, you want to make sure that your contract meets any industry minimums. So for example, if you're a writer, you should check in with the WGGB to make sure that you have all the appropriate protections in your document. And so that's it for episode 4 on contracts. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time when we take a look at chain of title. See you then.